So we're starting a brand new unit on trigonometry, and this first part of trigonometry covers congruent and similar triangles. Now you've talked about congruent figures probably since elementary school. Congruent means they're identical, so they have the same angles and the same side lengths. The very first few pages of this topic in your workbook showed you that there are three ways of proving that triangles are congruent. Those three ways are proving that three sides are the same, so side, side, side. Proving that there's two sides that are the same and one angle, or proving that there are two angles and one side that are the same. Those are the three ways of showing that triangles are exactly the same or that they're congruent triangles. We learned that the sign for congruency is a tilde with an equal sign underneath. This means is congruent to. So this is the first example. It asks you, are the triangles congruent? And if so, list the equal sides, equal angles, and state the condition for congruency. Basically what this question is asking you to do is to do a formal proof. This is one of the very few units in our 2D course where you're going to have to learn to do a very formal proof to show the steps and then to include a conclusion that proves why the two triangles are congruent. Later on when we do similar triangles, we'll be doing the same thing with similar triangles, proving that they are similar as well. So in question A, we have two triangles, and we can see that their sides and angles are partly labeled. We know that angle B and angle F are the same. With the sides that are equal, the 3 centimeters that are equal on both triangles, we have to know how to name the sides. With sides, we name them using two letters. So this side right here is side AB or side BA. It doesn't really matter where you start. What does matter is when you talk about equal side lengths in two different triangles, you have to make sure that the letters and the order that you state them in correspond. What I mean by that is if I say that this blue side right here is side AB, when I say the side that it's equal to, I have to start with the angle that corresponds to angle A. So angle A in the first triangle matches angle D in the second triangle. So because I started with angle A when I named side AB, I have to start with D and call this next side here DF. So we're going to prove that these triangles are congruent by stating their sides that are equal and their angles that are equal. We have AB equals DF, and now we're going to say that angle B, that angle B is equal to angle F, and that side BC is equal to, now if I started with side B, C, going this way, I have to call the next side FE because the letters have to correspond. So BC equals FE. I've now named an equal side, an equal angle, and another equal side. So I'm going to say, therefore, triangle ABC is congruent to triangle. Now, when I name them, I have to be careful to name them in the right order. So I started with angle A. That corresponds to angle D. Next one I did was angle B. That corresponds to angle F. And angle C corresponds to angle E. So I'm going to say that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DFE. And when I write that statement, I'm going to say the reason they're congruent in brackets. So it's side, angle, side, congruency. Now let's go look at example B. Example B also gives us two triangles, but they're not facing the same direction, so they're a little harder to tell which angles and sides correspond. We know we have to prove that those triangles are congruent, so first we're going to start by finding which angles correspond. So angle G is 75 degrees. That angle corresponds to angle M, which is also 75 degrees. Angle J is marked as 35 degrees. That one corresponds to angle K, which is also 35 degrees. And finally, angle H is not marked, corresponding to angle N, which is also not marked. For some of us, when we see which sides correspond and which angles correspond, we might find it helpful to write our congruency statement before actually showing the formal proof. It's just a trick that will help us to kind of make sure our sides and angles match up properly. If I was going to prove these triangles were congruent, I would be proving that triangle GJH, and I put the triangle sign in front to show that it's a triangle, is congruent to, now I have to name the second triangle and I have to make sure that it's in the same order. So if I started with a G, I'm going to start with the angle in the second triangle that corresponds or matches angle G. In this case, that's an M. And then the middle letter is J, so I'm going to put a middle letter of K, which corresponds in the second triangle's name. And finally, angle H corresponds to angle N. So my statement finally at the end of this question could be triangle GJH is congruent to triangle MKN, and I have to have a reason in brackets, which we're going to figure out right now. Keep in mind, you could start with any angle when you're naming a triangle. So if I named this triangle here, triangle HJG, that's perfectly fine. But when I said it was congruent to the other triangle, I would have to say it's congruent to triangle NKM, because angle H corresponds to angle N, angle J corresponds to angle K, and angle G corresponds to angle M. So make sure that you can name them in whatever order you'd like, but that the second triangle has the correct order that shows which sides correspond. So let's talk about which statements we're going to make to prove that those correspond. When we look at the picture, we see that angle G and angle M are both 75 degrees. So we're going to write that down. We're going to say angle G equals angle M. How do we know they're equal? Well, they're given. So we're going to put a little G in brackets. All of the congruent triangle questions will have given angles and sides, but this is a good process to start doing because when you get to similar triangles, you're going to have to state the reason why, and it might not always be given in the question. We also have a side. We have side GH, which is equal to, now when I'm naming this side over here, I have to make sure to do it in the right order. I started with G, so I'm going to start with M in my statement. So side GH is equal to side MN, also given, and angle J is equal to angle K, which is also given. Now notice the angle signs, those ones right there, in front of the letters. Make sure that you say angle G, angle J, and for a side we just name them with the two letters. So we've stated an angle that's equal, we've stated a side that's equal, and another angle that's equal. So because we've stated those three, now we can say that our reason for congruency is angle, side, angle, congruency. And that's the end of our formal proof.